Hello and welcome to Gnostic Tarot Cards historical presentation or module titled The Moon. Now what we're doing in these short kind of summaries of the cards is looking historically through some of the icons and the changes that the cards actually go through. This work is brought a lot in part by Christine Payne-Towler and the Tarot University and Arc Letters. Here is a place where you can go and find out more about iconography and the continental tarot, which is a term that Christine coined, which refers basically to the European stream of tarot, which we're going to discuss today. Now the first one we have is going to be the Visconti Sforza. The Visconti is one of the oldest tarots that we have, but if you want to hear more history about these decks and cards, you can go to Tarotpedia. That's a good place to go. It's like a wiki kind of thing, but right now we're just going to look at like the images and what's happening in the cards itself. So as you can see, the first representation that we have is that the feminine figure is holding a silver cord. Now, throughout kind of history, the silver cord has represented a lot of very occult things. And it's interesting that we find it associated with the moon. Because in some of the other cards, we're going to see that there's actually a sleepiness or kind of a dream state that's associated with the moon, in a very kind of cloudy area. So right off the bat, we're seeing that there is not only a veil behind the figure, but that the moon is in full view when the silver cord is being held. Now, it could be a belt. It's been, seen as it could be a belt, but it also could be that this belt, astrological belt, holds us and we're more in touch with it when we're associating through the silver cord. And this could be a strong reference to dreaming. So holding the moon, but now we have a kind of representation of the red over blue, which reminds me of the monasticism of the Tibetan lamas. Over in the traditions or hats of Tibetan Buddhism, they'll wear certain colors over certain other colors. And this just brought to me the red desire, but also the blue feminine emotionality that the desire goes over. So it depicted to me that even though there's a lot of desire in the moon, it's partly very emotional. So we have that. The next thing, she's standing on a cliff, which I didn't recognize in the book, The Underground Scream of Christine Payne-Towler, which you can actually go to Amazon and get a good copy. She has copies of that book available for sale at the website. But she shows that there's a cliff here in the Visconti. And I immediately thought, this could be the female representation of what we see in the oftentimes in the full card, the male stepping off the cliff. So we're seeing another cliff here, which is one of the only ones that I'm aware of in the tarot other than the Fool. So she has golden hair, and it represents the beauty of the moon, that we definitely want to kind of keep in mind, that the moon is not only mystical and magical, but it also has a very feminine and beautiful representation to it. So moving along, we have the Charles VI in the mid-1440s. You can see that there's a purely astrological reference when we go to the compasses. You can see both of them there. And then they're charting out on the book a lot of the astrology and charting when the stars are going to mix up. And we also have these stars right here representing the ninth. So it could represent more of the zodiacal aspects of occult teachings and everything. The ninth, or the Ennead, is pretty much the zodiacal realm once you get past the last, or the eighth. So next we have the veil over the moon area. We're seeing a very veiled moon. Although we're seeing a little bit more of the stars through the science of astrology, it's still veiled to us what's happening beyond what we can see mathematically and what the compass is. So next we have the École d'Est. And you see again, we have the compasses. White bearded man. This is one of the only men that we see with a globe and a red moon. So it's showing a lot of the astrology that's depicted in tarot right through these older cards. So it must have come from somewhere. And then again, we have the red robe over the blue, but we don't have a lot of the blue showing. We have a lot more red. So the focal point was a lot of red energy here. The next thing we have is the Parisian Tarot. And I find this kind of interesting because this is one of the first times that we see a different kind of image in the history of the Tarot. Now, we have the woman in the tower exposing herself. Again, we have the sexuality and the beauty of the feminine showing itself. But we also have a man with a harp that is seated in a garden, kind of trying to get her affections. Now, what's interesting is that the harp, or the lyre, in Hermeticism, it focuses on Thoth, the Hermes. And so this is very interesting that we're seeing Hermes with a harp there. Also, like I said, this is the first anthropomorphized moon that we've seen so far. So now we're definitely getting into the astrology, not only the astronomy, but the astrology, where the heavens and the celestial realms take on a kind of personification of their own. So this shows us a kind of force that comes through the stars and the zodiac, and some of the images and information that comes in there. Very, very great that we have that harp in there with the hermetic kind of influence. Next we have the Menachete Florentine. Now this one was kind of interesting because you see it's a man and he has his compass, but there's not a lot of feminine energy here, and he looks like he's a little bewildered, just like I am when I saw the card. Why is there not very much femininity here? You can see that he has these compasses, but also he has a very kind of reverent look, or kind of in awe. And that, in some of the mystery religions, is one of the main areas in cultivating a psychological orientation to the actual heavens and the experience of the cloud. We constantly have experiences of the cloud and the awe and the beautiful revelation of what the moon represents. And in the mystery religions, when the moon was at its full or at its noon, it took on these kind of forces, these kind of energies, and which I found kind of interesting because the hands are at the Ogdoad. They're at 8. Why 8? We don't really know, but we do know that the 8 represents the the harmonies. It represents a lot of different kind of energies that are really moon focused. But next we got the Metelli Tarot, and this is a very goddess looking figure, as said again by Christine Payne-Taller in the Underground Stream. She's obviously a goddess because we don't really see this kind of image anywhere else. We have the moon, but it's not so much focusing on the planets or the alignment of the stars, but it's focusing on the personification of the kind of divinity. So we see that the moon is on top of the head, but also that this feminine figure is very strong, very much strength. So it could represent like a Diana. And then we have this dog, the first time we've actually seen a dog in the history of the Tarot. Now we have the Marseille, where the dogs are howling, and they take up a portion of the card. We have the Crustacean, which takes up a huge portion of the card. The towers in the background, we see that they're different kind of towers, so they could represent different kinds of knowledge or different kinds of grades. We have the anthropomorphized moon again. And then next is one of my little favorite cards, because we see the Tarocco Siciliano in the 1700s. Now, I like this particularly because the moon is upset. If you look at it, there's a feeling of like, what the heck is going on around here, you know, kind of feeling. The next thing is you got the woman with her hands outstretched, referencing the laziness of the male. You know, and he's just standing there, not really doing much. And it's cloudy. Do we think that this is a cloudy representation of what's going on through history, or is this cloudy as in, is this okay? It's kind of saying that this isn't really okay behavior. Then again, it could be as a male. Personally, I have a affinity to the situation. But next we see that there's a reference to the soul. And it could be the activity of the masculine, meaning that the feminine is pointing out something to us. Sophia is showing us that, hey, what's going on with mankind? You know, we obviously have a tree here representing either leisure, or could be the tree of knowledge, the tree of the Adam and Eve story, representing that Adam fell asleep, but Eve never did. Sophia never did, and is waiting for mankind to wake up. So I really got a lot of that out of it. And again, it could be the tree of leisure and possible dissatisfaction for the first time of the social roles that the feminine has been put through in relation to the masculine. And especially with Italy and cooking and all of that. So next we have the Tarot of the Master, Giovanni Vecchetta. And it's an obvious sexual reference. I mean, this screams beauty and sexuality, and it's one of the first liberated Tarot images we kind of see. It's just throwing sexuality out there. The moon being the power over the feminine, very much showing us, whoever's using it, you know, what's happening here. Although some Tarot enthusiasts who are obviously, a lot of the intuitives are female, there's an irony here that there's a lot of breasts in the Tarot itself, and a lot of the users of Tarot are feminine. So it's kind of weird, which was pointed out to me somewhere in Tarot world, that the users of Tarot are feminine, yet a lot of the images we see are geared toward men, with the breasts and the sexuality and sensuality. Although this could be a social movement in kind of the liberation of sexuality and sensuality, but nowhere so much as the Tarot of the Master is the first time that we actually see this. And then we got the Crustacean again. So next we have the El Gran Tarot Esoterico. And now we have very big columns with the moon kind of in a, I don't know what's going on. She's very sleepy. So it's representing the dream state again with the very sleepy eyes. We see the rays of the moon definitely exerting an influence. If we didn't see, we have droplets here showing us that there is an influence of the moon. The water is a very big focal point. It represents about a third of the actual representations in this card. So we see that the water, or the feminine, or the dream state, the kind of fluidity, because we see the water is not only wavy, but it has different kind of currents. So we're definitely seeing that the water has a current in it, and that represents the energy that the moon has upon water substance. So we're seeing a lot of the wisdom of the ages coming through. Now the white dogs are not warring. They have kind of a happy facial expression, if you could call an animal happy. And they're not showing the dualistic dog on dog kind of world, but they're showing that there's kind of a resounding rally or whatever toward the forces of energy that come out at this obvious time of the moon. Next, we have a discussion from the Granditella. We have columns, gigantic columns. These things take up almost the entire card. As far as spatial content, we can see that they take up a large amount. It's a cloudy night, so we definitely have the idea that it's nighttime, it's cloudy, there's a dreaminess, a sleepiness, it's a full moon as opposed to the crescent, so we're not seeing the actual cycles of the moon now. We're seeing the full-on moon, the full power of the moon, and some of what Atella wants us to look at is a discussion. Now this is important because we see the animal nature of the elements, we see the dogs and the crustacean, and we see the power of the moon, and then they call it a discussion. So to me, this represents the psyche and how the mind actually has a difference in human beings than it does in any other creature. And that is, I forget who said it, but it's the ability to speak and to reason and have a discussion. This conversation that we have is what makes us human. The ability to take in words and the energy of words and to have a discussion. It has this kind of moony likeness to it because it's very cloudy. Words kind of cover things up, but it's also one of the great powers that we have as humanity, and that separates us from the animals. So I kind of just indicated that. The animal consciousness versus discussing. Animals don't really discuss anything. They kind of exist and they push forward. They can communicate, but they don't really discuss. And so I really feel like Atella hit this on the head as far as the third day of creation. And what about the discussion are we going to have? When it comes to the idea of creation, the ideas of the stars and the moons, of animal nature. And we also see that he put Gemini on it. And it's not so much that it's astrological, but that it's showing the duality of the Geminian kind of energies. So, moving on in our discussion, we're looking at the Fratres Lucas, or the Brotherhood of Light now. And then we see the Egyptian references of the two pyramids instead of columns. But what is interesting is that the colors are in opposition. The dog that's white is most powerful when it's in the darkness. And the dog that's dark is most powerful when it's in the light. So that's kind of odd. I don't really know why they did that, other than it's an artistic kind of look. But we also have a very big focal point on the opening, and the moon. And we still have the clouds. But it's very interesting that they contrasted the dogs with the black and the white. Maybe showing that there's one within the many. That even in difference we find unity. That could be one of the things they focus on. But also, you see the two dogs in majesty. They're not really fighting each other. They're kind of in respect of each other and mirror images of each other, which is super important because we see a reflection of maybe the life and afterlife, the death. But we also see here there's a moon with the crustacean kind of scorpion in it. So why is there a moon here and a moon here? And this looks like water if you look on it. So we see the dogs in this superhuman kind of watery mode and the reflection of the moon on the water. And this is super important because the next thing we're going to see is the 6 stars around the moon representing the 7 spheres of ascent in antiquity. And this is very, very, very pivotal to the mystery schools and everything that goes on with the astrological mysticism. And the next thing I want to point out is we have the sign of Cancer here, another dualistic reference. So the number 18, 1, the monad, in the 8, or Ogdoad, we're seeing another reference to this kind of whole motif that we've been seeing throughout antiquity with the tarot, kind of really focusing in on the Fratres Lucas, on the astrological references. In the Fratres Lucas document, they say, remember, child of earth, that whoever dares to confront the unknown is heading for ruin. Hostile spirits symbolized by the wolf wait in ambush. Servile spirits symbolized by the dog conceal their treachery beneath base flattery. And idle spirits symbolized by the crab will pass by without the slightest concern for the disaster. Observe, listen, and learn to keep silent. Although I'm talking. Now we're really seeing a kind of very hierarchical force here, showing us that someone above Earth is talking to us. Maybe the Hermetic Brotherhood, or because this came from the Fratres Lucas, it's probably the hierarchical brotherhood of humanity talking to us of Earth, letting us know in the physical that we're gonna become destroyed in the confrontation to the unknown, because it's going to shatter the forces that are already in stability that we're not really looking at. And then they're saying, what are these forces? We have the ones that are extremely evident, like the wolf, the servile ones that we saw in the dogs, and then the idle, the very unnoticed. That is the one that's the most dangerous because it creeps by and we can't see it unless we're looking at it. So, next thing I wanted to show was good old Papist, Gerard and Cass, or the Guillenot Tarot. And you see the letters here, and we got the Aquarius for the water. But the moon's shining rays, this is a focal point, and it even says the hierarchical distribution of light, occult forces, and hidden enemies. So we're really seeing what was shown in the Fratres Lucas right through that. There's a hierarchical distribution to us. Again, we're seeing the rays of light and the occult forces and energies. The dogs are in the water, just like we saw in the Fratres Lucas. And they're kind of like golden retriever looking dogs. They're not really harmful. They're more focused on the energy. Again, we have the animal forces focusing on, energies that are coming from hierarchy. And the columns are more like mountains, but they're very flat and they're kind of missing their peaks or whatever. But we see that definitely there's a force of droplets. And this could be an overall description of energy. So now we have the Napal. And then we again have an anthropomorphized moon. And it's very reverent. You see that the dogs are howling again. Well, one dog is howling, the other's kind of sitting. And the red drops from the moon could represent the menstruation that we saw in the Tarocco Siciliano. Again, very feminine forces, paths that lead to the dark mountains. Remember, the Fratres Lucas said that whenever you're looking at the unknown, you're turning into this ruin because we don't know what it's like. We're very slowly creeping toward our evolution, And we have a chalice as the kind of crest of this card, as Hall calls it. And it has a flame, which is represented here by the chalice. So next we have the Tarot of the Stars from Tav Obvious sensuality and sexuality as Tav painted his wife, and the towers are erect. This is one of the very weird focal points. We see erect towers, kind of almost completely contrasted to sexuality. And if you've seen the Tarot of the Stars and other of these slides, they're almost too explicit to show because it's extreme eroticism and sexuality. Although we got to remember that a lot of magical traditions center around the idea of generations and sexual energies and tantras. So it's not without merit that this is showing itself in the tarot a lot, especially through the moon. So we have the dogs again in crustacean, and astrological sun letters. And last but not least, good old Tarot of the Holy Light, which I feel represents almost all of these forces. We have a definite dogfight here, but if you look, it's kind of you could see that you have a very big, it looks almost like a mastiff, and a little bitty other one. So it could represent the domination of kind of the larger over the smaller. And the larger could be a woman, although it looks a lot like a masculine dog versus a feminine dog, but that's just a speculation, and in no way perpetuates any kind of role belief systems. We have very much feminine forces here. We see that the moon is again anthropomorphized, and it has the rays, it has the squirrely rays and the sharp rays. So we are seeing a male and female kind of wavy line of the feminine and sharp line of the masculine, always reminding us that the moon is a reflection. And then we have again a representation here of the six-sided star with the moon or the sun in the middle right there, showing us that again there's an astrology. Now Christine is extremely into astrology, and this is the attribution that was given as Aquarius through her research, but it's important to see that this represents that very feminine energy that we were looking at, and the ray ideas. So there's also a look of concentration. It's not so much a look of concern over the fight, it's more of a concentration. So we have that hierarchical energy again. But at any rate, this is Gnostic Tarot Cards. We've gone to a new site, so we're more reliable here at GnosticTarotCards.com. You can go and subscribe to us on YouTube, which a lot of you have. We're getting a lot of subscriptions. Hope you still come by and check these videos out. Visit on Facebook, Twitter, network blogs, and I need to change that. It's actually a WordPress software that we have on the site for you techies. But come and check it out and see our new blog on WordPress, Gnostic Tarot Cards. You can either click on the blogging link or just go to GnosticTarotCards.com/blog, and you'll be able to hit the blog. We also have podcasts on iTunes, which you're not seeing here, but come to iTunes if you like the iSoftware. Also, there's the podcast just represented mainly on the links on the blog. So lots of exciting and new ventures here. Thanks for looking at 15 cards of the moon and going through this historical presentation. I was happy to do it. Once again, my name is Tim Reeder-Wright. You have a good time.